Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started here. I want to say good morning, everyone. My name is Jerry Shockey. I oversee all the youth and educational programs here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. We're excited for you guys to join in. It's really the last installment for the 2013 and 2014 educational year with Pro Football Hall of Famer James Lofton, and we're extremely excited to bring this to you. I know our folks at Sidman are veterans, probably not the students, a new group of students, but I know our friends in South Dakota are new to this series. And really the idea and premise of the program, the reason why we started this about 3 years ago, is to really convey what it takes to get into the Pro Football Hall of Fame beyond just the athletic ability. And we know, and I know especially our friends at Sidman did a lot of research on Mr. Lofton, and we're already commending him on his tremendous speed. So we know our Hall of Famers are awesome examples of speed and athleticism and talent and skill and those sorts of things. But we know a lot of people across this great country that have those same type of attributes. It took a lot more than that. It took those character qualities that you guys are studying, the 6 pillars of character and more, the trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, citizenship, and like I said, a whole lot more to be enshrined in the Hall of Fame. And I have a secret for you guys, and I don't think it's really much of a secret, but these aren't character qualities to being a great football player and to making it in the Hall of Fame. These are character qualities to being a Hall of Famer in everyday life. So we're excited to give you guys the opportunity to ask Mr. Lofton some tough questions here today about, maybe what obstacles he faced in life, what advice he has for you guys, all those sorts of things. We got an hour, 2 schools, so you guys are going to have plenty of interaction today. We're really excited to get started on this. But I do have to thank a number of folks who helped make this possible. And first of all, we have to thank our friends at Extreme Networks, Jerry Yarbrough and friends there for being part of this and powering our Heart of the Hall of Famer series. Always our friends at San Diego Community College District, Caesar and Brenda and Diane, all those folks there. Thank you very much for, this is probably the 6th or 7th Hall of Famer you've hosted for us now. So and probably 3 in the past 3 weeks, I think we've had out your way, or 4 weeks. So thank you very much, Caesar, for all your guys' help out there. And then also we do have another friend out there, Polycom, Elaine Shuck, who's their Director of Education. I've known Elaine for years. We go to different trade shows across the country and always crossing paths. A great person, great company. Thank you, Elaine, for making this possible for those students in Piedmont, South Dakota. So we greatly appreciate that. We have to thank the teachers. I know Ms. Hostetler and Mr. Wilson and the folks that helped make this possible for the students, making arrangements, technology arrangements, and all those sorts of things. Thank you very much. But last but definitely not least, we need to thank the students, because you guys are the real stars of the show here today. You're going to be the one driving the program. I'm going to have some opening remarks about Mr. Lofton, and Mr. Lofton can share some opening remarks about character. And then after that, we're going to feed off the Q&A from you guys. So it's going to feed off the questions that you guys have for Mr. Lofton. So what I would like to do before we get started in the introduction of Mr. Lofton is I'd like to give each school an opportunity to unmute your microphone. And maybe if a student wants to come up front and introduce themselves and their school, where they're at, and then we'll give a little shout out for that school. So if you teachers, if you want to nominate someone, or if a student's brave enough to just oh man, I see Piedmont with all kinds of hands up. That's awesome. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and start with Forest Hills. Forest Hills, if you want to unmute there.
Hi!
Who wants to introduce your school? Who are you guys? Where are you coming from?
Forest Hills.
Awesome. What city?
Sidman, PA.
Awesome. Thank you there, Forest Hills. I know that, but wanted to make sure Mr. Lofton and the other schools know that as well. So go ahead and mute there. Thank you, Kim, for taking care of that. And let's go to South Dakota, Piedmont Valley.
I'm Elise, and we're in Piedmont, South Dakota at Piedmont Valley Elementary.
Okay, thank you, Elise. Thank you, Elise. I appreciate that, and appreciate you guys connecting in here today. So I would like to get to the introduction of our featured speaker and panelist today, and that's Pro Football Hall of Famer Mr. James Lofton. And first of all, he was selected in the first round. He's the 6th overall pick in the 1978 NFL Draft. As you heard me talk about his speed, he was obviously a deep threat as a receiver. He possessed both speed and great hands, obviously a deadly combination at the wide receiver in the NFL. He recorded more than 50 receptions in the season 9 times. He was the first NFL player to score a touchdown in the 70s, 80s, and the 90s. So 3 different decades he scored touchdowns. In 16 seasons, he caught 764 passes for over 14,000 yards. And the receptions was actually in a record at the time of his retirement. So he was the best out of any receiver that had ever played in the NFL. He led it at the time of his retirement. He was named All-Pro 4 times. He was All-NFC 3 times, and he's selected to play in 8 Pro Bowls. And he was born in California. Now, we like to recognize these guys for the on the field. Obviously, in 2003, he received the highest honor that any individual player can receive, and that's when he was enshrined in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. You see, there we go, the gold jacket. And James, I'll go ahead and unmute you here too, so you can, if you want to chime in before we get started your introduction. But I've got you unmuted now, just so you know that. But we like to recognize these guys for their off the field as well, because what I think you'll find is that their off the field is as remarkable, if not more remarkable, than their on the field career. And first of all, just starting off, he graduated from Stanford, one of the elite universities in our country, with a degree in industrial engineering. So obviously, not only is he a great athlete, but obviously a man of high intelligence as well. He has many of athletic achievements, including he was an All-American in track and field, as well as football at Stanford. And he actually competed in the 1976 Olympic trials. So obviously not only football speed, but world-class speed. He has athletic honors. He's in the Stanford Hall of Fame. He's the Miller Man of the Year finalist. He's the Green Bay Packers Hall of Fame, and obviously enshrined into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. He's got coaching experience. He coached with the San Diego Chargers, the wide receiver coach from 2002 to 2007, and he was also with the Oakland Raiders the following year. Where he's really been heavily involved with recently throughout his career is in broadcast and media. But he had the James Lofton television show for 5 years, which was in Green Bay as well as in Buffalo. He did the Pac-10 preview show. So if there's any Pac-10 fans, I know we're not really in Pac-10 area in either one of those places, but you never know. There might be some Pac-10 fans there. He did the CNN NFL preview show. He was an analyst in the studio. He was NBC NFL analyst. He's been with Fox Sports Net analyst with the Big 12 and Pac-10. And then now, Mr. Lofton, he's the lead game analyst for Sunday Night Football on Westwood One Radio, and which will be this was his 5th straight Super Bowl, if I'm not mistaken, that he has covered, and 7th overall as a sideline reporter. And Lofton joined the network back in 2000, took a little hiatus for his coaching career, still obviously involved with them, but nonetheless, that's one of his passions is radio and TV. But he's also got a lot of community involvement. So when you talk about that pillar of caring and citizenship, he's involved with the March of Dimes Wisconsin, Milwaukee Ballet board member, fundraiser for Golden House, Green Bay's first domestic violence shelter, United Way spokesman for the Green Bay Packers, part of the Wisconsin Special Olympics volunteers. Throughout his career, he's been involved with a number of philanthropic organizations. He participated with fundraisers for Green Hill School of Dallas, Texas. His wife chaired the gala and served on the board. And speaking of his wife, Beverly, they've been married for, I think it's going on about 30 years now, if I'm not mistaken. They have 3 children, 30-something. We'll just go 30-something. He's giving me the up sign. So 30-something. And he's a member. He's got 3 children, David, Daniel, and Rachel, and he's a member of the Rock Church in San Diego. So before I ask him to give his opening remarks, what I would like to do is I'm going to share screen again with you guys, and we're going to go to a quick video highlight of Mr. Lofton.
The great hands and even greater speed of wide receiver James Lofton made him one of the premier deep threat receivers of his era. Lofton played for 5 teams in his NFL career. He joined the Buffalo Bills in 1989, and in 1991, he became the oldest player in the history of the NFL to have over 1,000 yards receiving in a season. When his career ended, James Lofton had scored 75 touchdowns, caught 764 passes, and owned one of the most prestigious records in the NFL. He retired with the most yards receiving in the history of the league, 14,004.
So students, if you join me a second and everyone unmute your microphones and give a warm round of applause to Pro Football Hall of Famer, Mr. James Lofton. And Mr. Lofton, the microphone is yours, sir.
Jerry, that was a great introduction. I've never heard somebody talk about that long who's not that really that important, but you did a great job in researching. Some of those facts I had forgotten about. You know, it was interesting when I was thinking about this program, I knew that I was going to get to go over the 6 pillars of character. But one of the things that I wanted to start with is I was kind of thinking about the kids in the classroom. And when I was a kid in the classroom and then being an athlete and all those things, and how do I put those things together? And I noticed that some of the kids in the audience today, they had their sheets of paper. So on those sheets of paper, I believe they have some questions that they probably want to ask me later. So that means that they prepared, that they've gotten ready. And I think that was the one thing people ask me a lot of times, how did you play 16 years? Because playing in the NFL, 16 years is a long time. It's kind of like dog years. You know, everybody says one dog year is 7 years. So playing in the NFL, 1 year is like 5 years. So it's almost like I played 80 years in the NFL. But I love the part about preparing. And the kids who prepared today, they feel really good about their questions, about what they've researched. And it was the same way for me. When I was a kid, I hate to say this, but I liked doing homework. I mean, I didn't love it, but I liked it. So when I went home, it wasn't a big deal to turn the television off for a couple hours to do the homework or to review what the teacher had given us. When I went to Stanford, we had this study skills course that we started before we even went to our first class. And one of the things that I learned, and this is over 30 years ago, was this system for studying called SQR3. So if you're taking notes, SQR3. So when you get something, you come home and the teacher's gone over something in biology or something in history. You scan it. The next thing you do, you question it. You go, okay, now what am I trying to get out of it? And then you take out whatever it is, you read it, you review it, and then you recite it. And that really does hold up. And what it is, it helps you in your preparation when you're getting ready to tackle a tough subject. But that SQR3 is really something that I still use now when I'm getting ready to do a game. Let's say I got the Denver Broncos against the New England Patriots. I know a little bit about both teams. I scan over the notes. I make some questions. I go, okay, what does this team do well? What do they not do well? Then I read over it again. I review it, and I actually recite it. I say these things out loud so that I hear myself saying them and that they make sense to me. So that's kind of the way I approach it when I get ready to do a game. Now, we're going to talk about the 6 pillars of character. And I was trying to draw a visual picture of the 6 pillars of character. And the one thing that kept popping into my mind is I went back to Italy, back to Greece, to those old ancient buildings, and you see the columns. You see those long white columns standing up, and then there was a roof over it, and a lot of them were open air buildings. And that's the way that the Romans, who were great at designing structures, they built a lot of their structures with these pillars, and those pillars are part of your character. And you've got to build them. They've got to be really strong. Now, you guys have been over this before, but I want to go over them again. And the first one is trustworthiness. And the thing that I always think that's important about trustworthiness is you're trying to get somebody to ultimately gain the fact that you're trustworthy. So that when they ask you to do something, when you're told to do something, when you have a responsibility laid out in front of you, you have gained that person's trustworthiness. The second one is respect. And there was a great player who played for the San Francisco 49ers who's also in the Hall of Fame. And he was asking his teammates what was the most important thing to them about playing football. And a lot of them said winning. Some of them said the money that they make. But he said the most important thing is respect. And you earn that respect on the football field. It's not given away to you. It's not something that you can, just go out there and collect, but you have to earn it. So respect has to be earned. Number 3 is responsibility. And that's something that you have to show. So you're given something to do, and you have to show that you're able to do it because people are watching you. So you want to be responsible. Fairness. it's funny. You can turn on the television, and there are a lot of shows that come on that are reality shows. And not that they're all bad, but in it, the people aren't treating each other really well. But fairness is something that you demonstrate. So it would be something as simple as you're in the lunch line. Somebody has to bend over to tie their shoe. You don't jump in front of them while they're bending over to tie their shoe. You wait. You allow them to get their place back in line. That's something that's being fair, and that's something that you demonstrate toward one another. Fifth one is caring. And caring isn't something that just happens right away. It's something that you really develop. It's something that takes a while to show that you care about others, to even feel that caring every day. And it's something that's slow to develop, but it's something that's really important when you're building those pillars of character. And the last one is citizenship, and not just citizenship in the classroom, but you guys are kind of a little mini example of it, because I'm on the West Coast. We have a classroom in South Dakota, and then we have somebody all the way on the East Coast. We have Jerry, who's in, we don't know where Jerry is. No, we know where Jerry is. He's in Canton, Ohio. But we're spread all around the country. So that citizenship is now spread from sea to shining sea. So that's really unique about this program. So all those pillars that you guys have researched, think about those ancient Greek buildings that they built thousands and thousands of years ago that are still standing. And they're standing because they were built on a great foundation. So that's kind of my little spiel to start. And we'll let Jerry, who's the moderator, do a little bit of his magic.
I don't know how much magic is involved, but thank you, Mr. Lofton. I appreciate your opening remarks. And students, let me just remind you, because I know you have some prepared ones, and I'm sure with the time that we have, that you can probably go beyond just the prepared questions that you have. Let me remind you that you're talking to, first of all, there's been over 23,000 players that have played in the National Football League since it started here in Canton, Ohio. In 1920, there are only 287 members of the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and out of those 287, only about 250 are actually players. So you're talking to one of the best that's ever played. We're just not talking about very good or great players. We're talking about the elite, the best, the upper echelon. So I encourage you that just as you heard in his opening remarks, I mean, there's a lot of parallels between playing football and life. You talk about the preparation. Mr. Lofton had an unparalleled preparation. Some of the great players that you walk through and you see here, that's what separated them was preparation. And you heard him talk about that. That you guys can be confident in your questions that you guys have you've come up with because you've prepared. And that's the same thing with playing football. It's the same thing with taking a test. If you're prepared well, you're going to be pretty confident going into it. So preparation is of the utmost importance when we're talking about character. So with that being said, what I'm going to do is we'll just jump back and forth. We'll go since we only got two schools today. We'll go 2 questions from Sidman, 2 from Piedmont, 2 from Sidman, 2 from Piedmont, and we'll go back and forth as many times as we can. So Forest Hills, if you want to start off with the first 2 questions, I'll start off with the first one.
No problem. Go ahead, Bryce.
Hello, Mr. Lofton.
Hi, Bryce.
My name's Bryce. When we researched your career in the NFL, we learned that when you first played for the Green Bay Packers in 1979, your team didn't have a winning record, 5-1. The fans weren't the kindest, and you sort of rebelled against losing. That seemed to be a very frustrating and difficult time for you. What pillars of character did you use to turn that situation around?
Record was 5-11.
I'm going to tell you a quick story. My wife and we had our first grandson a year ago, and he actually turned 1 yesterday. So this morning, my wife was having to leave the house a little bit early because we do take care of him. And our daughter, who's 23, is not her baby, but she was going to be at home this morning. And so I was joking with my daughter, Rachel. I said, he turned 1 yesterday. And in that first year of his life, we call it the wonderful one. Everything that the baby does in that first year is wonderful. But today, I told Rachel, today he starts the 2nd year of his life. And everybody knows that that's called the terrible twos. So in that set, it was kind of a joke because the baby's not going to be any different yesterday than he was today. He's still going to be happy. You hold him and all that. You feed him and burp him and all that kind of stuff. But the question that you asked me about being frustrated, early on in my career. Early on in my career, like I said, in those dog years, I was kind of like a baby. So I was just learning what it meant to be a pro. And you can get advice from your parents, you can get advice from your teachers, but sometimes you have to learn and you have to experience things. And we talked about the caring and that how that develops. You're going to develop, you're going to change, but what you want to do, you want to have those pillars as kind of your role models, your goalposts, things that you know that are going to be important. So if somebody had told me, well, don't be frustrated because it's going to be tough, that's hard to believe, but it's also really true, because they're going to be, life is like a roller coaster. You're going to go up, you're going to go down, you're going to go up again. And the most exciting moments are the moments when you really have to hold on, when it's going really, really fast. So early in my career, yeah, there were some frustrating times, but when I look back on it, those are times of great growth.
Thank you very much. Let's go to another one there.
All right, here comes Mr. Selmer. You remember him last time.
Oh, okay, all right.
You know why I'm
This is
back,
gonna be
right?
good. It's going to be good, Mr. Lofton.
He barely fits in that chair.
I know. And I'm not a big guy.
Look this way, dear.
Hey, Mr. Lofton. First of all, I got to tell you, I am a huge Raider fan. So when you live in this area, you can't be a Raiders fan. It's just because people hate the Raiders.
Is it Bronco territory?
No, this is Steeler territory.
Yay!
You know,
I was only joking about the Bronco territory.
Yeah. And you know, Raiders hate the Steelers, so that goes back a long time ago. Hey, my question for you is that during your career, how did you put up, and I think it's good for our kids to know, like, how did you survive some of the negative criticism that, maybe fans were calling you, or the stuff that you went through life, and how did you try to shield that from you, or how did you deal with all the negative criticisms and things that go along with the status of the athlete you are?
Your kids aren't old enough to drive yet, but when they start driving, you have this really, really big window to look forward to the things that are coming up, that are going to be in your future. And then you've got this little tiny rearview mirror to look at the things in the past. And I think the negative criticism, things that you look at with that tiny mirror. So you have to be optimistic about what's coming next. So that's why on a car, that front windshield is so huge that you can look at all the good things. You've got side windows that you can look out. And the little rearview mirror, that's for the small stuff. That's for the negative stuff. There's so many positive things. I just think that you have to focus on the positive things more than the little negative things. Yeah, you learn from it. You go over a little bump in the road and go, hey, we just went over a bump. But you realize that you're still going forward.
Thank you. Oh, go ahead.
This is my first year as the assistant principal at this building. I dealt with kids from 15 to 18 at the high school for 24 years. So dealing with these students, I knew throughout the year that they let a lot of negative things bother them and don't realize that there's a lot of good things that they need to look forward to, and let the negative things go.
Yeah, you do have to let it go. You learn from it. But if something's really bothering you, you got a lot of great adults in your school who you can go and you can turn and talk to, and just trust them, because believe it or not, they're there to help you. They want the best for you. They didn't stay up late last night dreaming about, well, how can we make it tough on the students today? No, they want you guys to have a great day, believe it or not.
Hey, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Students, I think that's an important note. And that's another thing that comes up quite a bit with our Hall of Famers is that, they've really, they've surrounded themselves with people that are going to help them achieve their goal. They're not surrounding themselves with folks that are going to get them off track, folks that aren't going to help them, do well in school, folks that aren't going to help them do well in sports. They're surrounding themselves with those positive influence. But then you have to be able to, not only do you have to surround yourselves with those positive influence, but you have to be willing to accept their advice, especially teachers, because they may see something in you that you don't see. I've heard it over and over again with our Hall of Famers that, even Jan Stenerud, who was a kicker for the Chiefs in the 60s and 70s, talked about I believe it was in college that his coach saw him kicking a soccer ball and said, man, we need to, so he saw something in Jan that obviously Jan didn't see. So just keep that in mind as you go throughout. So we're going to go to our friends there at Piedmont Valley in South Dakota. Since we let Forest Hills get 2 questions and a comment, we'll let you guys get 2 questions and a comment as well. And maybe they have a student approaching the microphone. We can't hear you there, Piedmont. Okay.
Hi, my name is Malachi, and my question is, what inspired you to play football?
What inspired me to play football? It's funny, you guys are looking at me sitting here in this gold jacket from the Hall of Fame, but you got to realize I was a 3rd grader. I was a 4th grader, and when I was real young and just starting out playing sports, I wasn't thinking about the end of the road. Like you, I'm just thinking about, okay, what did my dad put in my bag for lunch today? I hope he didn't put those hard-boiled eggs that he doesn't boil enough in there. So it was really about that day. So when I first started playing football, I just started playing because I liked it. So during football season, we played football. We even played football on the street in front of my house. We went to the park where we had grass. We played there. So we played tag football in the street. And we played tackle football without pads or anything at the park. And later on, I played Pop Warner football as a kid. But when basketball season rolled around, I played basketball. My dad put up a hoop in the backyard. When baseball season rolled around, we played baseball. I pitched. I wasn't a very good pitcher. I gave up a lot of home runs when I was a kid. So, it wasn't like, oh, man, I'm in the 3rd grade and one day I want to be a professional football player. It's different for you guys because you guys see so many sporting events. You see entertainers and actors. There are shows about people's lives on TV all the time. For us, it was more about, just having fun today. What's in the lunch bag. It wasn't this big plan of what's going to be down the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Malachi. If you guys have another student that wants to approach the camera, and I believe maybe Mr. Wilson wants to make a comment after this. I believe he's a Raiders fan.
I'm Elise, and my question is, what motivated you to keep going?
What motivated me to keep going? That's a good question. And I'm going to jump to the 11th year of my career. I had played 9 years for the Green Bay Packers, and I had just played 2 years for the Los Angeles Raiders. They were in Los Angeles at the time, and Los Angeles was my hometown. And I was 32 years old, I think, and I got cut. I got released. I got fired by the Los Angeles Raiders. And when you're 32 years old, you played 11 years, or now I think about it, I was probably 33 years old. I played 11 years. Most people would think that your career would be over. I had actually planned for, my career kind of winding down a little bit. I had taken a job with Merrill Lynch with a financial firm in the off season. So I was kind of planning on kind of quitting, but I didn't want to quit. I still wanted to play. I had this desire that I felt like I could still do it. So my motivation, it was just something inside me. Like I said earlier, I think I was motivated because I loved to prepare for the game. I didn't mind the workouts that I had to do on my own during the offseason. I didn't mind the running, the weightlifting, all that kind of stuff. So that stuff for me was still fun. And so my motivation was I wanted to play. And I went to another team. I tried out with the Philadelphia Eagles. They decided, no, we don't need you right now. And then a week later, the Buffalo Bills called me. and I played there for 4 years and played in 3 Super Bowls. And after that, getting cut by the Raiders in my 11th year, I did play 5 more years after that. So I played a long time after that. And the motivation was I just wanted to play. And I know that sounds simple, but it's when you find something that you are really passionate about, that you enjoy doing, that you just want to do, whether it's soccer, whether it's dance, whether it's art, whether it's music. You know, that's the one thing that you want to do. You want to find something that you're passionate about. Sometimes it's going to be your job. Sometimes it's going to be your hobby that you're really passionate about and you can't wait to start doing. For some of you, it might be just being a parent. That may be the most exciting, most passionate thing that you ever have in your life. And you really have to find those things and then just pursue them until the end. Good question.
That's a great question. Thank you very much. Mr. Wilson, are you there? Do you have a question?
Yeah, you bet. Hey, Mr. Lofton.
Hi, Mr. Wilson. Dennis the Menace
How are you
there.
doing?
Is that Dennis the Menace there in the blue behind you?
Yeah, that doesn't go very well. I guess my question for you, and we have these talks a lot, is when you have to do some group work, you have to work with others, maybe people that you don't want to work with. And I'm sure that in your career, you were able to get in some locker rooms, get on teams with certain characters, certain people that maybe you didn't mesh with completely. How do you find ways to just make it work, get your job done, get past what needs to be accomplished, and continue on without making issues, making rifts in the process?
You know, I think when you start to think about working together, the first thing is you have a goal. You either have a project that you're going to get graded on, that you want to do well in. You have something that you're going to accomplish that other people are going to look at for a long time. And I think so that's the important thing. I think you put yourself behind you and you focus in on what's best for the team. And you always hear about teamwork, and that's really what teamwork is. Teamwork isn't about what's going to make me happy. Teamwork is about all of us getting together and kind of reaching our goals. And I think when you go into a situation, everybody has a different personality. And sometimes those personalities don't mesh real well initially. But if you are willing to kind of give a little bit and relax a little bit and get to know that other person, I think that you will find that you have more in common than you have differences. You know, you see it in our political structure. You know, you see different people, Republicans and Democrats, who decide before an issue even gets talked about that they're not going to resolve it. So if you're sitting there in the classroom and, you know, it was, okay, the 4th graders aren't going to work well with the 5th graders. Well, who says that has to be the case? I think you can work well with anybody if you're willing to give it a chance and willing to try it out. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. And real quick, something that you brought up, James, that I think is a great thing to bring up for these students is, you know, you said you went with the Buffalo Bills. You went to 3 Super Bowls. I don't know if these students know, but the Buffalo Bills actually unprecedented. They went to 4 straight Super Bowls, 4 consecutive years. But it also brings up the question that, you know, no matter how hard we prepare, because I know that the Buffalo Bills, I know Coach Levy, I know just what a high character organization that was and continues to be under the Wilson family and whatnot. But you know, we don't always, even though we prepare as well as we can, we don't always get a gold jacket. We don't always win the Super Bowl, and we don't always get an A on the test. What advice do you have for students that maybe tried their hardest and didn't get, you know, the A or the B that they were shooting for?
Yeah, and this is going to sound ultra corny. You know, when you talk about doing your best, you feel good about doing your best. You know, other people are going to judge you a little bit, whether or not that's always correct. You know, your teacher's going to give you a grade on something. Your parents are going to give you an approval, a hug. Your classmates are going to, you know, say, oh, you could have done this. Maybe you could have done that a little better. But deep down inside, you'll know if you prepared for it, if you really did your best, you might go, oh, man, I kind of knew the answer to that question. But in sports, it's so funny. If you're a basketball player and you have a chance to win the game by making those last 2 free throws, and you know that, you shot free throws all summer long, and you just happen to miss those last 2 just because you were nervous, you still tried your best. You know that you prepared before you got up there. Everything is not going to be a fairy tale ending. But I think if you try your best at that moment, and if you prepared before that moment came about, that you can be confident that I gave it my best shot. Whether or not that's always going to ultimately be a win, that's not always the case. But you can rest knowing that you did give it your best shot.
Yeah, Students, I think you have a great example of that this year with the Super Bowl. I mean, the Denver Broncos, and Peyton Manning is one of the guys that you just know, there's no one that out-prepares Peyton Manning, but he still lost. He still lost.
And it's funny. Peyton Manning probably couldn't work more hours than he works, but that's really the case with a lot of players. And, I get to work around the league. I get to see a lot of different teams. Everybody prepares hard. Everybody works hard. And there are just small differences between a team that goes to the Super Bowl and a team that has what we would call a lousy record. That doesn't mean that they have a lot of lousy players. It just means that it didn't work out for them that year. Those players, they don't give up. They know that they are a select few, just like you guys in the classroom are a select few. I saw a special on TV the other day about a town in Portugal that just collects trash. People dump their trash there, their landfills. Well, these students in that city, they play in an orchestra, and all their instruments are made out of recycled trash. And it was about the beauty that they were able to make with this recycled trash. And so, we're talking about professional athletes and winning Super Bowls, and they're way up here. What you have to realize is there are people who are all around the world who would love to trade places with you just today, just being inside a classroom and not working out in the fields for pennies. So you guys are really fortunate, and you can't get down on yourself because you got a 78 on a test, or you didn't, sink the winning free throw or something like that. You got to be proud of yourself when you're trying your best all the time.
Thank you very much. Let's go back to Sidman, PA, Forest Hills. If you got another 2 questions, go ahead.
Hello, Mr. Lofton. My name is Tyler, and our class actually did a video conference with Bart Stark this school year. At one point, he was your coach, and you said he's the most honest, sincere man I've ever met. Mr. Stark also spoke a lot about team. Together, everyone achieves more. Obviously, this is good advice for athletes and non-athletes, and this follows the 6 pillars of characters. Which pillar of character do you feel is most important?
Ooh, Tyler, that's a tough one, because in my visual of the pillars of character, I have that old Roman building, so it's going to need all 6 to stand up. But I think the one that resonates with me the most, Tyler, is fairness. It's funny, when I go to the grocery store and, you take your shopping cart out to your car, and, people kind of leave the shopping cart right there in the parking lot. And I always think that let's leave things a little bit better than what they were beforehand. So the minute I get out of my car, I'll grab a couple of shopping carts and push them back up near the grocery store, just because I want things to be better than they were before I got there. And so I think if you're being fair with people, you're giving them the benefit of the doubt, you're trying to help out, you're showing caring. So that fairness pillar to me is the most important one, because that shows a certain amount of kindness that you're going to give out on a daily basis. Good question, Tyler.
Hi,
Yes.
Mr. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Hi,
Oh.
Mr. Oh, wait. I'm sorry, Jerry. Do you have a comment there, dear?
I'm zipping up. Go.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Lydia.
Hi, Mr. Lofton. My name is Lydia, and my question is, who is your biggest influence in football and in life to make you the person you are today?
Ooh, that's a good one. My biggest influence in life My parents got divorced when I was going into the third grade. I had an older brother who was 7 years older, and then two older sisters who were 6 and 5 years. So that made me the baby. And I was, like I said, I was going into the third grade. And so my dad was a single parent, and he worked 2 jobs, but he was also he had been in the military for 22 years, and he had just retired from the military. So he was pretty strict, but he was at all my sporting events. He would take off early from work. He was a big supporter. And I remember him coming to an open house when I was in the 5th grade. And I remember overhearing the teacher ask about Mrs. Lofton. And I heard him say, well, James doesn't, he doesn't have his mother in the picture. And she was really surprised. And the reason she was surprised is because I came to school clean every day. Clean T-shirt, my jeans didn't look too dirty, my tennis shoes weren't too bad, and my face was washed. So that was a big reflection on my dad. And so he was my biggest supporter and probably the most important person as I was growing up. As I transitioned later in life, my wife Beverly is, my best partner that I could have, and a great mother to our children. And, so, the people who are closest to you, my dad, and then now my wife. Good question.
Thank you very much, Forest Hills. Let's go back to Piedmont Valley. And Piedmont, maybe if you can have this next person queued up behind that person, that would be great.
Hi, Mr. Lofton. My name is Courtney, and I have a question about what was your hardest character trait while you were playing?
Can you repeat the question? You're just cutting out a little bit at the end.
What was the hardest character trait for you while playing?
Yeah, it's kind of the hardest sacrifice. Is that what you're asking? Did I hear sacrifice?
Hardest character trait.
Oh, hardest character trait. Okay. What's
hardest character trait? Well, I said earlier my favorite one was fairness. The hardest one, I think, is responsibility, because that's something that, like I said, you have to show that. And so you have to show it over and over and over again until, whoever is looking at you knows that you're responsible. And so that's one that you kind of, if you're an older brother or an older sister, you know a little bit about responsibility because you've been asked to watch your little brother, your little sister. So you can't watch television or play a video game and watch your little brother and little sister, because they're going to get into something to make you get in trouble. You know that right away. So that responsibility that you have when you're doing that, or when you're doing a certain project, or you've been asked to do something, I think that's the toughest one. And responsibility is something that, even at my age, that, is really important. Thank you.
You guys have another one?
I'm Jean, and my question is, when you were playing football, were you a different person on and off the field?
When I was playing football, I couldn't get the last part of it.
Were you a different person on and off?
I didn't hear the last part of the question.
The last part of the question.
Asking if you were a different person on and off the field, like a mentality, things like that.
Jerry, did you get that?
Yeah, they're breaking up a little bit. I think maybe your wireless signal is breaking off a little bit, but I think they're saying, were you the same person on and off the field?
You know what's funny? You always hear about athletes who really crazy on the field and really intense and all that. And I smiled a lot when I was playing. So I like to have a good time. I was a little bit of a practical joker. And so some of that carried over into the field. But I was still pretty intense. I wanted to win, but I also realized early on I had some really great coaches, and I learned some really good lessons about being humble, it's funny when I'll see an old highlight of myself and I was doing a little dance after a touchdown or I was spiking the ball. I was going, boy, I didn't remember doing that. Because you do get excited, you do get caught up. But I had a lot of fun when I was playing, and I think that's really my personality. A little bit of a jokester. I like to have a good time, so I think I was the same way on the football field too. Good question.
Another great question. Thank you. We'll go back to Forest Hills.
Hi, Mr. Lofton. My name is Josie, and we learned that you had a dark blue Porsche. It's partly a romantic, a man who loves the arts and sentimental things, and it's partly a little boy because you have a little lunch pail with monsters on it. We think that's really cute. Do you still have that lunch pail, and do you use it?
It is so funny that lunch pail I took out of the storage garage the other day, and it's actually sitting in our house because my wife asked me about it for some reason. I don't know why she asked me about it, but yeah, it was from the Munsters. That's an old TV show, and so it has the Munsters on the front. So I still have it. I don't use it. It's a little corroded inside because it's probably over 30 years old right now. But yeah, like you said, I was a little bit of a jokester and like some interesting things. And one of the things my wife and I still do, we have movie nights. So once a week we try and go to the movies, and we probably do that at least twice a month. So there are a lot of movies that we have lined up that we like to go see. Good question.
We thought that was so cute. And when I read that you were very sentimental, obviously, whenever you cleaned out and you found that lunch pail, are you holding on to that? I'm just curious.
Oh, you know what? I'm going to keep it. I thought about my grandson who turned 1 yesterday, but he might lose it at school. So I don't know if I'd let him take it to school, but it was a fun lunch pail. And I think, we all hold on to certain things. Recently in San Diego, I don't know if you guys have been watching, but we had these wildfires. And so there are people whose homes were destroyed because they caught on fire. And what happens in that situation is you have about 30 minutes to get out of your home. So people try and pack up old pictures and different things, and keepsakes. And when I've had to evacuate twice here in San Diego, and when you pull away from your house, it's a strange feeling because you think, what happens if it did burn down? Now, luckily, our house hasn't burned down. But if it did, you would lose a lot of those things. But at the same time, you realize that your life is the most precious thing, that those things, you may not be able to replace them, but sometimes they're just things that you're holding on to. But it's kind of nice to go out and be nostalgic and look at old pictures and old keepsakes and stuff like that. Because I have old pictures from teammates and different things from different teams that are important to me. But the most important things are your family.
So true. Thank you.
Thank you.
And perhaps I can convince Mr. Lofton to text a picture to me of it, and we'll send it along to the schools. I think that would be funny.
I can do that when I get home.
That would be great.
Go ahead. I think Forest Hills, you got another question? Go ahead. I think you just muted there, Kim. There you go.
Hello, Mr. Lofton. I am Claire. We ask this question on every Hall of Famer we meet. When you were playing in the NFL, did you have any superstitions or do any unique routines before stepping out onto the field?
I've got to say this before I answer that question, that you guys have done a great job with your questions. I'm really impressed. I don't know what I would have asked to a Hall of Famer or to a professional football player when I was your age, but you guys have done a great job, and everybody's presented themselves really well. I had routines, but I wasn't really superstitious. When we would travel, we would have a roommate. And so we're in a hotel room, and there are 2 beds in the hotel room. I would always sleep in the bed furthest away from the door. I don't know why, but I did. And my roommate for my first 8 years was a good friend of mine, Mike Douglas. And Mike actually lives here in San Diego. We both grew up in Los Angeles together. And when we played for the Green Bay Packers, we would play 5 games in Green Bay, 3 games in Milwaukee. And the hotel that we stayed at in Milwaukee was really cold and really drafty, and you really couldn't turn up the heat in that room. Well, Mike was a linebacker. Linebackers are pretty big, and I'm tall as a wide receiver. Mike went out and I don't know how he got my exact size, but he got us these matching pajamas. And they had the feet in them, and they had the little snaps in the back like you would if you were a little kid. So we had these custom-made pajamas. And we walked up and down the hall because our hallway was full of all the different players in these custom-made pajamas. And it was so funny when we did this. So, that was one of the things, what bed you sleep in, what you might eat for breakfast the next morning. But when Mike made those custom-made pajamas for us, that was a pretty good time and a pretty good laugh with our teammates.
Thank you very much, Forest Hills. We appreciate the questions. Let's go back to Piedmont. Looks like we got about 10 minutes left, so we can get through a few more from each group.
Hi, my name is Kaden, and my question to you is, when your career was over, was it hard to move on?
If you lean in all the way closer to the microphone.
When your career was over, was it hard to move on?
To move on.
Oh, when my career was over, was it hard to move on? It's funny because I didn't know when it was going to be over. Like I mentioned earlier, after that 11th year, and I got cut, really fired from my job, I didn't want to admit that it was over then. But once I had played my 16th year, I knew that I was retiring, and so I had kind of planned for it emotionally, and also off the field. I had a job to go into. I went into broadcasting, so it wasn't really hard to move on, because at the same time I was getting a chance to watch my kids play, and my two boys and my daughter, they all played sports, so it was time to kind of focus in on them a little bit. Every once in a while I'll have that dream that I'm still playing or something like that, but it wasn't real hard to move on. I got to play long enough, and I think that's the one special thing. I played 16 years, so I got it in and out of my system, and so it wasn't real hard to move on. And I've enjoyed the broadcasting. I did broadcasting for 9 years, then I coached for 8 years, and I've been back in broadcasting for another 5 years or 6 years after that. So it hasn't been real hard to move on. I loved what I was doing, but it wasn't hard to move on.
Next question there, Piedmont. Oh, there we go. Yeah, lean forward. That came through a lot clearer. If you lean forward and just talk almost like you're almost a yell.
Hi, my name's Brady. What character trait do you think you can improve on?
What character trait did I use to move on?
What character trait do you think you can improve on?
Well, what character trait do you think I can improve on? So you don't think I'm perfect in all of them? It would be interesting, because I think somebody else, like my wife or my kids, they might pick out all 6 of them and say I could improve on all 6 of them. But I think if my favorite one was fairness. So the one that I would like to demonstrate the most, that I would like people to see the most in me, would be fairness, treating people fairly. And, I think that's really important. And it's funny, being a broadcaster, as I'm doing a game, you could criticize somebody on each and every play, or you can find the person who did something well on that play and praise them. So, and that's kind of what I enjoy doing when I'm in the broadcast booth. I enjoy finding the good stuff to talk about and not being real negative on people. So maybe fairness is the one that I like the most, and the one that I will continue to improve on the most. Good question.
Thank you very much, Piedmont. Let's go back, see about 5 minutes. Let's go to 2 questions from Forest Hills and probably another 1 or 2 from Piedmont and close out the program.
Our former principal always told us to surround yourself with positive people. Do you agree? And how important is this as we go through life?
I think that is important, but if you only had positive people around you, there are also people that you want to lift up. So you might be around some people who are negative, but you want to find a way to make them happy, to make them feel good about themselves. You guys have probably heard that song by Pharrell called Happy. And when I listen to that song, I can't help but feel good about it. And I think when you're happy, you're going to make other people around you happy. So when you're positive, you're going to make those other people around you positive, or at least a little more positive. So you're not always going to be able to just say, okay, give me these 4 or 5 people because they're always in a good mood. Every once in a while, you're going to have to lift somebody else up because they're having a hard time. And I think that's important too. So if you can be that person who helps other people feel good about themselves, you're going to feel good about yourself too. Good question.
Next question from.
So hurry up, seriously.
Hurry up. Get up there.
The toughest player you've ever played against. Now, keep in mind, we do live in Steelers territory here.
Oh, the toughest player I ever played against. The toughest Steeler that I ever played against was Mel Blount. He was the Hall of Famer. He played in the late 70s and early 80s when the Steelers were the best team in professional football. He was number 47, and he was really tall, and he was a little bit bigger than I was. So I always had a tough time going against guys who were kind of like a mirror image of myself. And but I did score 3 touchdowns against him once. So even though he was tough, he brought out the best in me as a player and as a competitor.
Thank you very much, Forest Hills. And let's go to Piedmont for a couple questions to close out the program.
Hi, my name is Chelsea, and my question is, what team did you like playing on best?
What team did I like playing on best? Now, I played really for the most of my career for 3 different teams. I played for the Green Bay Packers for 9 years, which was a long time. I played for the Los Angeles Raiders for 2 years, but that was my hometown, Los Angeles. And then I played for the Buffalo Bills for 4 years. Now, the interesting thing about those 3 stops is we had a child born in each one of those. My first child, my son David, was born when I was playing for the Green Bay Packers. My next son, Daniel, was born when I was playing for the Los Angeles Raiders. And then our third child, our daughter Rachel, was born when I was playing for the Buffalo Bills. Now, if I was really hard pressed to say which one was my favorite, I would actually say the very last one, because you kind of appreciate the kind of the end of the line a little bit more. So playing in Buffalo was really special. Although I have a hard time not saying Green Bay, kind of wishy-washy there. So you could toss those 2 up between each other, Green Bay or the Buffalo Bills. But I also coached for the Raiders, so I got to work for them later on. So all of them were special and unique in their own ways. So I really didn't do a good job answering that question, but I can't pick between them. It's kind of like picking which one of your kids are your favorite. Good question, though.
Now, Mr. Lofton, could you comment on which one do you think? I mean, I think they're all high character organizations, but which one really do you think personified what we're talking about here today?
Well, I think if you were to look at all 3 of these teams that I played for, the Green Bay Packers, the Los Angeles, now Oakland Raiders, and the Buffalo Bills, that people within those organizations would demonstrate all 6 pillars of the great character that we're talking about. And different teams have won and been championship teams at different times, so you really couldn't distinguish between them. The people who are fans of the Green Bay Packers love the Green Bay Packers. Oakland Raider fans, you've got one sitting there in Pittsburgh. And then the Buffalo Bill fans, they love their team and their community. They're a small community just like Green Bay is. So all of them. And when I travel around the league, and I always hear people talk about our fans are the best, that's because the word fan comes from fanatic. And so you're really fanatical about your team, whether you're in Green Bay, whether you're in Oakland, or whether you're in Buffalo. So, Jerry, you're not going to pin me down and make me pick one out of the 3.
I tried. Didn't work. Piedmont, if you got a last one, and then we'll ask Mr. Lofton for his closing remarks.
My name is McKenna. What is it like to know that you're in the Hall of Famer, one of the best?
It's kind of strange because I still think of myself as that skinny high school quarterback who wasn't really, that good. I was really fortunate that throughout my athletic career, from probably the third grade until I finished playing, 30 years later in the NFL, that I just really, 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 really loved what I was doing. And that was really the case in my life. I enjoyed going to class. I enjoyed being in the classroom. I enjoyed my teachers. I loved when I was in college. I remember I had this geology class at 8 in the morning. And when you go to college, you get to pick what time your classes start. There are a lot of kids who would just take afternoon classes. I didn't mind getting up early, going to this class. Everybody thought I was crazy for going to classes at 8 in the morning, but I like getting my classes over before noon. So I've always been real fortunate in that I've had fun doing what I've been doing. Sure, it's been hard work. Like I said, there have been ups and downs like a roller coaster, but I've just really been blessed and really been fortunate that I was able to do things that I was really passionate about. And I think, like I said earlier, that's what you want to do in life. It may be your job that you're passionate about. It may be your hobby. It may be your family. But there's something that you enjoy doing, and go out and do that. Have fun doing it, and make other people around you realize that you're having fun and that you're having a good time and that you're being safe. Thanks.
And I was going to ask for closing remarks, but I don't think we can get, I think that's a great closing to what we're talking about here today. So students, if you'd join me and unmute your microphones and saying thank you to Pro Football Hall of Famer, Mr. James Lofton.